being on a rocket ship is not like being on a cruise ship. No one ever says, oh, being on a startup's like a cruise ship. Like, it's smooth sailing, right? No, being on a rocket ship is like holding on with dear life and like bouncing around like this and like panels are flying off the thing and you're scared to death that at any moment you're going to blow up. That's what being on a rocket ship's like.
Welcome to From the Ground Up, the podcast where we delve into the inspiring stories of entrepreneurs and their journey to build successful startups. I'm your host, Jake Aaron Villarreal, and in each episode, I will sit down with founders to learn about their experiences, the challenges they faced, the lessons they learned, and the insights they gained while turning their dreams into reality. Today, we'll be exploring the remarkable story of Louis Beryl, the founder and CEO of Rocketplace, a three-time entrepreneur who's taken a company public, sold another one for over $200 million, and worked at the renowned organization Y Combinator as well as Andreessen Horowitz. As a passionate mentor and investor, Louis has backed over 15 unicorns, helping countless founders by offering valuable advice, making significant hires, and providing unwavering support.
It's the trillion-dollar problem facing our country. Can lending startup Earnest reinvent the lending landscape and make a dent in our debt crisis?
Louis's journey began at a young age when he started selling golf balls, eventually turning that into a thriving business with the help of friends.
Entrepreneur from a very young age, you would just find golf balls everywhere. So I would sit out on the golf course and sell them. Before I knew it, I had quite a thriving golf ball business. And so I started to hire all my friends, essentially all the other local kids, to sit at different places on the golf courses to sell the golfers golf balls.
This early experience laid the foundation for his passion for entrepreneurship and his drive to build successful companies. Over the years, Louis's appetite for early-stage company building has only grown stronger, leading him to immerse himself in the world of startups. Louis's time at Andreessen Horowitz and Y Combinator allowed him to learn from some of the world's greatest investors and entrepreneurs, helping him shape his own approach to the startup world.
I wanted to experience what some of the best founders in the world, how did they run their businesses? How did they pitch? How did they think about the future? And I just wanted to be around them.
His unique perspective on company building led him to start Earnest, a rocket ship of a startup that quickly grew to do $1 billion a month in loans.
Would you lend a chunk of money, say $10,000, to someone just out of college? No income, no real assets, and very little credit history. A bank almost certainly would not, but if I told you that same person just graduated from, say, Harvard Business School, is about to start her job on Wall Street next week, well, that kind of changes things, doesn't it? Certainly the general idea behind the loan company Earnest, which says it looks beyond credit history and FICO scores and looks carefully at potential when it decides to whom to loan.
Louis's experiences in the startup ecosystem have taught him the importance of adaptability, resilience, and surrounding himself with talented and like-minded individuals who share his passion for innovation.
It wasn't so much that I wanted to be an investor, but I wanted to be around these early stage companies and I wanted to learn from some of the world's greatest investors and entrepreneurs.
With his latest venture, Rocketplace, Louis is working to build a platform that provides investment infrastructure for investment firms and investment products aiming to make the process of buying and selling crypto more accessible, less confusing, and more cost-effective for investors. By drawing inspiration from successful financial platforms like Fidelity, Louis seeks to create a cohesive ecosystem that supports both individual investors and fund managers.
One of the cool things about crypto is kind of like a commodity at the same time as it's a technology infrastructure.
Despite the hurdles, Louis's unwavering positivity, resilience, and passion have allowed him to persevere and achieve great success. As Ben Horowitz famously said, entrepreneurs sleep like babies, crying and screaming every night.
You should only pursue something you are truly passionate about.
Now let's dive deeper into Louis's entrepreneurial journey and learn from the man himself about the experiences that have shaped him and the startups he's built. We'll explore his thoughts on building successful teams, the power of networking, and the impact of emerging technologies on the future of investing. Please join me in welcoming Louis Beryl to our podcast From the Ground Up as we embark on a fascinating exploration of his entrepreneurial life and the lessons he has learned along the way. Louis, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Jake.
It's a jungle out there. in up markets, down markets, and you need to figure out how to make it happen. And sometimes it's, you gotta kill to eat, you gotta figure out how to survive, you gotta maneuver where no one else is going. And I want to learn a lot about you. So let's take it back to the beginning. With the audience today, tell us a little bit about where you're from.
Sure. Yep. I grew up in Florida, and was a entrepreneur from a very young age. I like to tell the story of my first business was selling golf balls, and so I grew up on a golf course. Florida, there's just golf courses everywhere, and as I don't know, I was probably about 9, 10 years old, and you would just find golf balls everywhere. And so I would kind of pick them up, but before I knew it, I had a whole box just full of them. And you would go to kind of the local grocery store or the local pharmacy in Florida, and they would sell these things for like 3 for $1. And so my entrepreneurial mind was like, well, I have all these free golf balls. I'll sell them 5 for $1, right? Like I'll totally undercut the market. My cost of labor was low. My cost of supply was low. So I would sit out on the golf course and sell them. Before I knew it, I was had quite a thriving golf ball business. And so I started to hire all my friends, essentially all the other local kids, to sit at different places on the golf courses to sell the golfers golf balls. And what we would end up doing was that it was kind of like a pyramid scheme, but we would end up we would go and we would pool all the money together, and we would go straight to the baseball card shop with our profits right then and buy baseball cards and then divvy them up. So that was my first business.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's.
How did you know how to hire your friends? I mean, as a young kid, starting a business or a concept of taking something and making money from it, that's like one thought. But to actually then go out and hire your friends, how did you pay them, or what was that process like?
Yeah, it's funny. I think there's like 2 schools of thought in this, in working with people or not, right? Sometimes there's certainly a school of thought of folks that's like, oh, you might not want to ruin the relationship, or you might not want to invest with people. I have definitely taken the opposite approach my whole life. I really like to work with people I know well, and whether those are friends, whether those are family, I think what ends up happening is there's a tremendous amount of trust that you can build in those relationships, and I think that's really key to when you're building a company or any type of work experience. And I think the other thing is, when you really get to know somebody, there's some really interesting things that can happen. And like one of those is you really start to understand someone's strengths, and you start to understand what their weaknesses are. And really, as a leader, what I'm really looking for is, I really want people to lean into their strengths, and I don't want them anywhere near their weaknesses, right? Like if there's areas of things that they don't like, I actually want to be able to recognize that and find someone else to do those things, right? I don't want people doing work that isn't fulfilling to them or that they don't feel good at. The other thing that happens is actually the level of honesty can be really, really high. So my co-founder, his name's Ben Hutchinson. We met about 10 years before we started Earnest. That was my second business. He co-founded Earnest with me. When I decided to start Earnest, what I did was I called up all the smartest people I knew in finance and people that I had good relationships with, friends of mine. And Ben, after I talked to him, was like, he was living in London at the time. And he's like, I talked it over with my wife, by the way, who I introduced him to and went to college with. And
nice.
He's like, we've talked it over and we're moving to California, like to start this company with you. And his wife was 8 months pregnant or something at the time. And now we founded Rocketplace together. So it's been, we have now worked together for, I want to say over a decade, and we've known each other for about 20 years. And it's not just about working together for a long time that builds that trust, but it's also, we can disagree with each other, right? When something's going on that he's like, no, I don't think that's the right thing, he can just tell me. And we can have that very open and honest and fast dialogue to try to keep us on track. And I just think it's really just much more efficient and much better. So I really like working with people very, very well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. And when it comes to founders or co-founders that are collaborating with others, it's a challenge to have that honest conversation where you don't sever that relationship. Sometimes you have to make really big decisions and you disagree. But if you can disagree and still come out of it on the other side with a still working relationship, those are truly the greatest partners to have. Those are the ones you can work things out with and not have hard feelings in the process, which is great to hear. Now, you said you introduced his wife to him in school. You attended Princeton undergrad, and then you went to Harvard Business School, which I'm sure was an amazing experience. Where did you meet her? And we'll talk a little bit about Harvard.
Oh yeah. So his wife was in the same dorm room as me freshman year at Princeton, and so I actually met his wife before I met my wife. So we're and then many years later, when I became friends with Ben in New York, his wife was actually living with my then girlfriend, who is now my wife. They moved in together for a short period of time. And my wife and I kind of said to each other, who we should intro to each other? That's how that started. And we're very, very close. And we've now started 2 businesses together.
So not just friends, but also you're a matchmaker, that's awesome. Very important skill to have in this world. Tell me about Harvard. Growing up, was that a place you wanted to be at some point? How'd that come about? And then more importantly, for a lot of people that didn't go there, how'd that help prepare you to be a startup founder?
Yeah. So I went to Harvard Business School and Harvard Kennedy School. I got a joint degree at the 2 schools. And I'll tell you a little bit about how both those schools prepared me. In terms of, did I always want to go there? Funny enough, I went to Princeton undergrad. I think that, as a young person, I went to public school as a young person. My mother didn't have a 4-year college degree, but she was an entrepreneur. And I think that I just was very motivated to work hard and to get into the best possible school I could. And, some of this is a little bit like luck about where you end up. And I'm really thankful that I went to Princeton undergrad. I studied as an engineer. It was a really amazing experience. As I graduated, my first step in my career, I worked at Morgan Stanley as a electricity and natural gas options trader in New York City. And it was really there that I started to learn more about grad school. And I had a lot of colleagues who had went to Harvard Business School, and especially in the kind of senior management ranks. And so that was more when I started to learn about what that school was like. And I visited the school. And one of the amazing things about Harvard Business School is I think it really prepares you to make decisions under uncertainty as a leader. The whole style of the school is, it's kind of like work. You read a case, has a lot of detail about the situation and data about the situation. And then you have a class, which is kind of like work, where you have to discuss the situation and make decisions. And that's basically what you do every day at work, right? And you discuss situations, you use some data and some context. And by the way, you never really know the right answer, right? You have to make a decision there's no right answers really. And you have to work with in that discussion environment just like work. You have to talk to other people who might have a different opinion and listen to their opinions and try to come up with the best path forward. So I really loved that about Harvard Business School. It was an incredible education experience. That said, I also got a degree at Harvard Kennedy School, and I actually will credit Harvard Kennedy School for really helping me understand deep down what it meant to be an entrepreneur, which you might not think about. You might be like, oh, Kennedy School is like a policy school. It teaches politicians. But it's funny because when you meet someone at Harvard Kennedy School and you're like, hey, what are you doing this summer for your job? Or what are you doing after you graduate? They're like, I'm moving to the Middle East and I'm going to work on women's voter registration. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's cool. Have you ever been there? No, like, no, I've never been there. I'm like, oh, okay. Do you speak the language? It's like, no, I don't speak the language. Are you getting, paid a lot of money? And they're like, no, I'm basically getting paid nothing, right? And so you meet these people that are passionate about a problem, who want to solve it, and despite any lack of resources, they're motivated to go and try to solve that problem. And that is what being an entrepreneur is, right? Like, you have no money and no experience, and you're totally scared, and you're worried about your own safety and everything else, and yet you go forth and try to solve this problem and try to corral resources and get people to work with you and do those things. And actually, that's real entrepreneurship. And I learned.
Yeah, keep going.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
I was just gonna chime in there. What we see and what I think is very accurate from what you're saying is sometimes it's not really about making the money. It's about what's your mission, what are you trying to solve, who are you trying to serve. But also, I think resourcefulness is the best resource that you have as an entrepreneur, where you don't always have the answers and you also don't always have the resources, whether it's economically or people or whatnot. But it's in those moments that you figure things out, you solve problems, which it's great to hear that part of it. And to get the 2 degrees there sounds to me amazing. And also, I'm sure there was a network that you were able to develop there too, which I'm assuming has had an impact.
That I would say that the network has been great. My business partner and my venture capital firm, I was a joint degree at the Kennedy School with. And so, I would absolutely say, I think the other thing that was great about putting the 2 degrees together was when you think about a lot of the really complicated, messy, big businesses, if you think about, or industries, if you think about financial services, if you think about healthcare, if you think about energy, the list goes on. All of those have huge regulatory and public policy components. Look at what's happening in financial services right now with the Fed and Janet Yellen, and Rocketplace is in the crypto business. So even more regulatory and public policy implications, and there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty. And so that's not just a business problem. It's not just like, oh, what's your cost of acquisition and marketing strategy and go to market and hiring people and making money, duh. It's also like, well, what's the SEC going to do, right? And how are these things going to be regulated in the future? And really understanding both sides of those things and how that's going to impact that business environment going forward. And so that's one of the things. I don't want to say I'm an expert at it, but it was one of the things I started to recognize. I actually started to recognize this at Morgan Stanley when I was in the energy business. I was in charge of at a certain point in time for Morgan Stanley. I was in charge of the Western electricity grid. And for people that aren't experts in the Western electricity grid, actually there's a huge component of hydroelectric power in the northwestern part of the United States and Canada. But the thing you might think about it, like when you're modeling this in like a fancy spreadsheet or computer model, would be like, oh, well, if the power price is this and they have water, they just like turn on the dam and, they maximize revenue and they make money, and that's how we built the model. But you know what? It doesn't work like that at all, right? Actually, you have real people there. It's run by the Army Corps of Engineers, and they have like 10 other things they're thinking about before they even turn on the hydroelectric dam, like flooding and irrigation and salmon runs and recreation, and that list goes on. And so there's all these other factors, and then it gets to, okay, does the power plant make money, right? And starting to understand how the world is complicated was part of what I recognized when I was a young person at Morgan Stanley Energy, and part of why I went to the Kennedy School to try to bolster that, like, hey, the world is complicated, get smarter about that so that you're prepared to do that as you build companies going forward.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, sometimes the landscape is bigger than you think it is when you dive in, and then you have to figure out what else is going to interrupt whatever you're trying to create or build. Now, you've worked at Morgan Stanley, government agency, startups, and Andreessen Horowitz is a company that you started working before you launched Earnest. Tell us about that experience. It's a great brand. It's a great company. They've funded a lot of really innovative companies. Pull back the curtains a little bit, if you would, for people that don't know about that organization, really what it is that you were looking to learn when you joined.
What was I looking to learn? I'll try to do both of those things. Two questions: pull back the curtain and what I was looking to learn. In terms of what I was looking to learn, I think deep down I was just in love with early stage company building. That was like my truest passion, even from a young age. And I think I just wanted to be in the slipstream, in the primordial ooze of early stage company building. I had already founded a company, which luckily a few years later went on to IPOing. All right. But I think as I joined Andreessen, it wasn't so much that I wanted to be an investor, but I wanted to be around these early stage companies, and I wanted to learn from some of the world's greatest investors and entrepreneurs. Andreessen Horowitz is built by entrepreneurs, but then also, and they have a ton of operators within within Andreessen Horowitz. So it's not just entrepreneurs; it's just tons of talent that I wanted to learn from. But then also, actually, the companies themselves. I wanted to experience what some of the best founders in the world, how did they run their businesses? How did they pitch? How did they think about the future? And I just wanted to be around them. Funny, what I learned, what I didn't realize I was going to learn, which I learned pretty quickly, was that I didn't really want to be an investor at that point in my career. I was about 10 years younger. And the analogy I usually give here is, it's almost like, my love for early stage companies was kind of like, imagine a kid's young love of basketball. And they love everything about it. They love watching the games. They love thinking about the strategy. They love wearing the uniforms and playing on the side, doing everything, right? But this kid who's gotten older actually kind of now has a chance to play in the NBA. I'm not saying be a superstar, but just play in the NBA. But in sort of some sort of weird happenstance, has ended up on the coaching staff. And by the way, they're the junior guy on the coaching staff. So so the junior guy on the coaching staff never gets to play basketball. So I'm the junior guy on the coaching staff being what am I doing? Right? My knees are still good and I'm still an athlete. And I actually could maybe play in the NBA, and maybe I can make the playoffs. Maybe I can make a championship. And, just that dream of it. I'm not saying I'm good enough. And so that was what I realized at Andreessen, was that, one, I really wanted to be, at that point in my career, a player. And two, the other thing I realized as I was meeting all these entrepreneurs, working with them, was that I can play. It actually helped me get over my imposter syndrome that all entrepreneurs have, which is, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough to play. And actually hanging out with those entrepreneurs all day. I was meeting some of the world's greatest entrepreneurs, the LeBrons of entrepreneurship. But I was like, I think I can play, right? And maybe I'm crazy, but I was, it helped me kind of get confident enough to jump out of the nest. And it was an amazing firm, and I learned a ton, and the people were great, but I'm really glad I jumped out to go do it. In terms of pulling back the curtain, I don't think I'm going to say anything that everyone doesn't already know, but the difference of Andreessen at that moment than most venture capital firms and what they were building was they actually viewed the firm more like a company, meaning like, how does Andreessen do marketing? How do we build infrastructure to help companies in all these ways, so that we, the firm, and well, actually all of our companies, and thus we, the firm, as a result, are the most successful. And one of the really amazing things that they would do is, we were very data driven and very focused. But one of the things that I never forgot was they, in the same way that when you build a company, you have to think about your acquisition funnel and how you close a customer. We would model and think about our acquisition funnel, and our customers were the great companies. And one of the things that they did was they would pitch the companies that were pitching them on why they should work with Andreessen. This was like unheard of. They were like, they weren't so impressed with themselves that they didn't recognize that when they really wanted to do a deal, they needed to sell themselves. And I think that they learned that because Ben and Mark were real company builders. And, Ben was a enterprise SaaS founder. And so he knew, hey, when I'm going to pitch some, big enterprise company, we got to tell them, we got to have a sales pitch on why they should work with us. And he brought that right to Andreessen. We can't just expect them to take our money. We have to pitch them. And that was awesome. And it really takes the entrepreneurs and like, wait, you guys are pitching me? Because that never happens in VC. Never.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. You mentioned something about imposter syndrome as a founder, or not feeling that you're enough, which I think is at the heart of almost everybody when they're talking about doing anything bold in life. Do I have what it takes? Do I have enough of what it takes? But then to actually take action and do it is a difference between companies or individuals that start things and make them happen, and people that don't. You left there and you started Earnest, a fintech platform that provides student loans, loan refinancing to college students. Co-founded it with, like you'd mentioned, your partner, Ben Hutchinson. And that's an amazing story in itself. And I know we're going to get to Rocketplace here, but walk me through that experience of taking really an innovative idea and bringing it through to being acquired. From your perspective, what were some of the lessons you learned in raising the capital? You raised, I'll let you tell the numbers. I think it was over 300 million, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was more like 100 million, but I can get in. The numbers are complicated because of we would raise a mix of equity and debt.
Okay.
Because we were a lending company. But let me talk the initial idea for Earnest, which I think was really powerful, and I think it's still really powerful, was I was a graduate student, and when I was a graduate student, I had student loans both at undergrad and graduate school. But by the time I was at graduate school, I had a number. I had 5+ years of work experience. I had credit cards, and I had financial history. I had savings. I had done stuff. And I remember I applied for student loans, going to one of the best schools in the country with a financial background. What I would consider perfect credit. And what I mean by perfect credit is I had made every payment I was ever expected to make, right? All those things. So, I had saved money for retirement, all the things you're supposed to do. And yet, right off the bat, I get denied for student loans. And I'm like, how is this possible? Right? I'm like, who could you be accepting? Right? Like, what is going on? I'm actually expecting you're going to give me the best possible rate, and they don't even want to give me a loan at all. And I'm like, this is bananas. All right. These are non-government student loans. Everyone qualifies for the government student loans, but the government ones maybe don't cover everything, or they're more expensive. Do I do anything at the time? No, I just take out I finance it however I'm able to finance it, with ever high interest rate loans I'm able to get. I'm actually working at the time for Harvard. I was teaching economics. So I'm doing things on the side, right, to pay for graduate school. But I think I graduated with well over $100,000 of student debt, which is not atypical, by the way, for graduate students. I've built a student loan refinancing company, and people sometimes graduate with $400,000, $500,000 of student loan debt. It's insane. Yeah. All right. So, but what the real thing that stuck in my mind was, clearly we're not doing high quality risk assessment of individuals. And if someone were to I kind of broke that down, and it was basically like, if a person came to me and they gave me all, if I had come to someone and they gave me all their financial statements and everything, and I was able to go through that and really think about this person, both their history and actually their future, what does the potential look like for these people? Could I do a higher quality credit assessment? And the reason I believed that was possible was actually because this is something we already do in finance. So in standard finance for corporates, that's actually how Apple raises debt and Tesla raises debt. They have sophisticated financial bankers that go through their history, they go through their balance sheet and cash flow statement and income statement, and they make forward-looking projections, and they say, we think this person can repay this amount of debt based on all this stuff. This is the rate that they should get, and they do that every day. All right. So why don't we do that for regular people? Well, the reason was, maybe the loans aren't big enough, or it's too complicated. It was really a cost problem, right? And a data problem, not a methodology problem. And so I said, I'm pretty sure we can build that with software. And the big thing that was changing in the world was, instead of needing to take all that stuff from in paper form, we now, all your bank accounts and retirement history and everything else is all online. We can just suck that data in, electronically. And so that was kind of the key insight that we had at Earnest. No one had ever done it before. And guess what? It worked. And it was amazing. We grew like a rocket ship. So we went from basically doing no lending to all of a sudden we were getting $1 billion of applications every single month. I mean, it was bananas. People always talk about a startup being a rocket ship, but one of the things I think that maybe they don't get in that analogy is that being on a rocket ship is not like being on a cruise ship. No one ever says, oh, being on a startup is like a cruise ship. It was smooth sailing, right? No, being on a rocket ship is like holding on with dear life and bouncing around like this, and panels are flying off the thing, and you're scared to death that at any moment you're going to blow up. That's what being on a rocket ship's like. And you're just hoping, you're just trying to hold it together, right? And everything was broken all the time because, you had thousands of people emailing you, and it's like, oh my God, what's going on? So you're always playing catch up. We grew from 0 to 250 plus people. We had offices in San Francisco, Austin, Salt Lake City, and we built an amazing company, an amazing culture. But at a certain point, the company got to the size where we had at this point raised over $1 billion of debt, and that kind of to fund the loans. But in order for Earnest to really like grow into the size of company it could be, we really needed to bring on like a financial partner that had a pretty enormous balance sheet. So we partnered with Navient. They had $2 billion of cash on their balance sheet, and Earnest within 12 months had grown 8x and became the national market leader in student loan refinancing.
That's wild. I had no idea it got that big, and still doing very well today.
Still operating under the Earnest brand, and yeah, the market leader. Really, really excellent company. Hundreds of people. One of the very first hires that we ever made at Earnest, certainly in the first 20 people, I believe, started out as a credit analyst and worked his way up to a whole variety of roles. Is now the current CEO, and I'm super love that team and his name's David Green. He's amazing and was not just super talented, just an amazingly good person that people liked being around and wanted to work for. And from everything I hear, he's doing amazing. I'm really, really proud of him and the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's just goes to show you that it truly is the people in the end that really make the difference in companies, whether you're early stage or already successful. To take it to another level, it's incredibly important to really understand the DNA of that person and to give them an opportunity to put them into a role where they can really thrive, grow, and make it happen. Really excited to hear that.
I think the other thing you have to do when you have great people is you have to keep promoting them. Like one thing that I've had to learn is, sometimes you're in a company, it's growing fast, and you have two options. You have someone who's great and been moving up, but they've never done the job before, and so you're like, do I promote this person? Maybe you're reluctant to do that, or do I hire someone with experience, gray hair, someone who has done the job before? And I don't really have a rule of thumb here, but I would say that I think it's really, really healthy for a company to a good percentage of those promotions, those leaders, to be internal. Keep pushing people, great people. They will surprise you, and it's really healthy for the company to see that upward momentum, and it helps keep the culture, the good, positive things of the culture within the culture versus bringing someone outside. And the reason I say I've learned that is because I think I have made that mistake too many times by bringing in outsiders.
Hiring globally can open the door to vast talent pools, but knowing where to look can take time. Paperwork can be complex, and it's costly if you get it wrong. We help founders hire remotely across 5 continents and in 50 different countries, and we do it in 3 steps. First, we listen to your company's story, the core skills required for the role, and why it would be great to work there. Second, we tell that story globally across multiple candidate channels we've developed over 10 years. And third, we schedule candidate interviews within 48 hours. Hiring from different cultures can be complex. It takes time, and there's no guarantee a candidate's the right fit once they're on board. That's why we take additional steps to give you peace of mind it's the right fit once you make the hire, and give you 6 months to make sure you've gotten it right. There's a whole world out there. Why not hire anywhere? It can save you time and potentially save you labor costs as you scale. For a limited time, we're offering a $5,000 credit towards your first hire, and if it's not a fit over the course of 6 months, we'll replace them absolutely free or give you your money back. Go to matchrelevant.com and claim your offer with promo code MATCH2023. An analogy to, NFL football or any really professional teams, there's two ways of going about it. It's, bringing in people, draft and develop. You bring them on, and as they grow, they become starters, or you can go out in free agency and bring people that are already successful and help build your team that way. But you don't always know what you're getting. And also, I think people, athletes, whoever it is, there's always a need to progress and a path for growth. And if that's limited, you don't have happy people. And that's really what a lot of companies we're talking to have figured out, which is, sounds like you figured it out too, which is great.
Took me longer than I wanted, but it's a journey.
Yeah. And that's That's one of the reasons of the platform that we have here is to show and share ideas to others that are on that journey, but they just don't know yet. Like, how can I short circuit my path of getting to the right answers without having to go 10 or 15 years to find that out? So that's great. Now, you have great success with Earnest, and then you end up becoming involved with Y Combinator, which, by the way, we love. Lots of innovative companies have come through there. What was it that made you want to be part of that organization? And more importantly, again, another question for you, what were the things you were looking to contribute and also kind of get out of that experience?
Yeah. I was really lucky I was involved at Y Combinator for, I think, about 4 years, maybe just under 4 years. I had started mentoring some folks there while I was still at Earnest, and then after I left Earnest, got to essentially I joined Y Combinator part-time, and I had a bunch of friends. Y Combinator is filled with folks who were entrepreneurs themselves. Some of the entrepreneurs I actually worked with in Andreessen ended up at Y Combinator, and then other folks that I were friends with. And what's cool about it, it's kind of like almost like being at startup camp, where like all the counselors used to be campers, and we're all just coaching folks through. We all just want the best for everybody, and we want to help them raise money. We want to help them understand what our struggles have been, whether that's hiring, go to market, fundraising, and help try to demystify some of these things for them so that they can go off and build great companies. The ideas, the talent is theirs, right? We're not solving the technical problems for them. It's more around, that mentorship of, hey, you've got a great idea with great talent. Let me help you with some of those other things, how to communicate it to investors, how to communicate to employees, how to communicate to do sales, how to prioritize between different things, right? And let me tell you about the mistakes we've made. Ultimately, why did I want to do it? This just goes back to what I said before, which is I just love everything about early stage company building. I just wanted to be around amazing startups. I just love being part of that community. I love telling people, helping people with my story. But then also I love hearing all their amazing things that they're working on, because people that are so impressive. And I can't tell you, I've invested in 300 something companies, but easily, a huge number of them have built way bigger companies than I'll ever build. Or at least have built so far. It's just amazing to see them thrive.
We're going to get into Rocketplace now, but before we do that, what's one or two of the companies that we would know that you helped invest in that came out of Y Combinator that's just doing very, very well now?
Oh, probably the Ginkgo Bioworks is the probably the one I'm closest with. I've known Jason for an incredibly long time, and I've known all the founders back from when they were in a lab at MIT. No money raised, no nothing, way before they ever applied to Y Combinator. And again, Jason is an amazing founder and has built an enormous multi-billion-dollar company. And him and his co-founders, Barry, Reshma, Austin, Professor Tom Knight, it's, all the technical credit there is 99.99. It's 100%, not even 99, 100% all theirs, right? So how do I help? It's more about just like, hey, it's part of the sounding board of, should you apply to Y Combinator, right? What can the next stage at helping incredibly smart founders, not that Jason's not ambitious, he's incredibly ambitious, but helping take that incredibly smart, incredibly ambitious founder to just open, hey, this is what it could be. These are some of the investors who are out there. This is how that vision, that story could be told. And this is how we can think about the beginnings of this business model and move from a technical lab concept to, a portfolio of incredibly valuable options. That said, again, Jason and his team came up with all the ideas, all the specific industries that they came up. It's most of the time just being a sounding board to various things. Maybe sometimes there are things around hiring. So, I probably shouldn't name names here, but some of their really, really key hires. I think I helped pretty significantly with, and those people ended up driving tremendous amounts of revenue to the company. Yeah.
That's great. Again, I think the network goes back and forth. You help others, they help you. And for those that don't know, what exactly do they do in the market today?
Yeah. And by the way, that point is very true. Jason actually is on the board at Rocketplace, and I ask him for his advice constantly. So it's 100% a two-way street. And I'm sure that he's given me more advice personally than I've ever given him.
Yep.
What Ginkgo Bioworks does is they're a biotech firm that essentially works with other large companies. So imagine a company. This would just be an example. They have several business lines, but imagine a company that develops different flavors of things to put in food products in the market. And let's take a very simple example. Take vanilla, right? So they use vanilla in their products. What Ginkgo Bioworks would do is come in and work with that company, and essentially, like, maybe how they're producing that vanilla can help them either produce maybe a different flavor of vanilla, a slightly different flavor profile, or maybe they would help them produce it more robustly or more cheaply, like, whatever the objectives are of that company. I'm just making something up, right? They help, kind of bridge that gap between, a bioorganism into a product more efficiently or with some other objective. The other thing that they have an enormous business in, which actually just grew out of COVID, was essentially testing. And so Ginkgo Bioworks is really cool because what they have built is essentially a computer platform. And so, this is something I learned at Andreessen Horowitz, this whole idea, which is totally Mark Andreessen's thesis around software is going to eat the world. Jason really brought that concept, Jason and his team, in credit to Professor Tom Knight at MIT, who was a computer science professor, basically said, well, what if we programmed organisms? But Jason and his company, instead of just like programming the organisms themselves, which they do, they've built a platform, they call it a foundry, where other biotech companies can come in and they can work with them to essentially program the organisms. And so one of the things that's really cool about Jason's company is that it's a platform for other companies to use, and they work with tons of other companies.
Wow, that's incredible story, but also sounds like a lot of innovation. And I know COVID changed a lot of things, and a lot of innovation came out of that. So it sounds like it's another case of one of those companies.
So then they used the programming platform, because they had all this automation, to then revolutionize testing and became one of the largest testers in the world for these things. So
wow, yeah. I don't think that's going away anytime soon. So that's, I'm sure, very, very successful for them.
It's kind of, you hope it does, but it's also, they're in the business of keeping everyone safe and healthy. So that's good.
Yeah. Mission and vision is, I think, important. And when you find something that you can build that's also solving problems that impact people, it's incredible. Let's dive into Rocketplace. Rocketplace is a company that you've been building now for roughly 4+ years. It's a startup in the crypto space. Where did the idea come from, and what problem are you trying to solve with Rocketplace today?
Yeah. So Rocketplace has had a few different iterations, for sure. But what we focus on today and the problem we're trying to solve is really comes out of a belief that what's going on in crypto is a really important fundamental technology to the future of financial services. I personally don't believe it's replacing financial services. I don't think crypto is going to put all the banks out of business or make the US dollar irrelevant. I don't believe that. But I do believe that there's a bunch of underlying financial infrastructure that we are constantly improving as a society. And what has been built with crypto is going to be the next really important layer in that improvement of financial infrastructure across the world. And that's kind of just a general thesis. So, when you believe that, there's an element of like, okay, well, what could the future look like if kind of if this financial infrastructure changes? And one of the things I believe is that essentially we're gonna have financial products that sit on top of a crypto blockchain infrastructure. So just like a very simple example would be like, think about a normal stock. A normal stock, back in the day, you used to have stock certificates, and you would have to keep those stock certificates and deliver them. And then things progressed, the technology progressed, and now like you have brokerage firms where like Fidelity and Charles Schwab aren't sending you your stock certificates. They have all those. And actually now it's all electronic, right? But if you were to buy a stock, there's still multi-day settlement processes, and these things only trade on certain weekdays, and there's a whole back office infrastructure. And so if you think about where that can go in the future, we should be able to trade stocks with virtually instantaneous settlement. And actually all money, all wires, all ACHs, all assets should be able to have instantaneous settlement and ledgers that are super well tracked. When you start thinking about that, well, it's like, okay, well, once that starts happening, what about other financial products? What about things like ETFs and index funds and hedge funds and all sorts of various products, real estate funds that all start getting built on this infrastructure? And I actually believe one of the cool things about crypto is kind of like a commodity at the same time as it's a technology infrastructure. So I'll give you the best example of that that's happened. Oil. So oil is also a technological piece of technological infrastructure, while at the same time a financial asset that you can invest in, right? So like you can invest in oil commodities, but turns out we also like use oil as inputs into plastics and cars and all sorts of other things. Crypto is kind of the same thing, where it's like, I believe we're going to use it into all sorts of financial products, but also like you can invest in the asset. And the cool thing about that is, it's done in a way, like crypto is much easier for normal people to invest in versus oil. Like 100 years ago, if you're like, oh my God, oil is changing everything, like what were you going to do? Like put barrels of oil behind your house? Like you could have really invested, right? But in crypto, you can't. It's much more easily broken up. And so we're building a firm. The focus of Rocketplace is really to help build the financial infrastructure for this future of financial services. But at the same time, we're also building a retail product. So kind of the closest analogy of what you see today is a little bit like Fidelity. If you have a Fidelity account, you can buy and sell stocks, buy and sell bonds, buy and sell funds, but they also have built a tremendous amount of financial infrastructure for fund managers. They do distribution, they do all these other things, and they kind of bring those things together. And so we're trying to also build that financial infrastructure for investment firms and investment products, while at the same time also be able to build distribution and have a retail arm and bring those things together. So that's what Rocketplace is focused on.
That's great. So it's different than a Coinbase that's very focused on the consumer in terms of where you're going with really two focuses, one being consumer and the other one being infrastructure for really B2B, it sounds, which to me...
Yeah, I mean, in financial services, one of the things that's generally true is that these companies overlap, right? So like in traditional financial services, you have JP Morgan, maybe that's like Coinbase, and you have Fidelity. But you know what? Could you send cash? Like, does Fidelity kind of act like a bank in certain circumstances? Yeah. And do they have a credit card? Yeah, Fidelity offers one credit card. JP Morgan must offer 1,000 credit cards. Okay. Does Fidelity have like a whole suite of normal banking services? Not really. They have some, right? JP Morgan, could you buy stocks and bonds there? Sure, you can. But is it a lot easier to buy stocks and bonds? Much cheaper, much easier to do that at Fidelity? Yeah. So like these things overlap, but they're still much different, right? And that's kind of like where we believe us and Coinbase are. Is there going to be a tremendous amount of overlap? And could there be similarities in certain products? Sure. But ultimately, companies have different focuses and they serve different demographics and different individuals differently. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of companies that I think crypto is changing the financial infrastructure for the entire world. There's going to be a tremendous amount of overlap for a huge amount of companies.
Lots of innovation in crypto, absolutely. What was the breakthrough moment or idea that you at that moment thought, you know what, this is something we could really build and we can create a product or a platform that we could bring to the market with Rocketplace? What was the breakthrough idea for you?
Well, I think it was more of a frustration. A lot of entrepreneurs come up with their ideas through frustration, which is, I think I, as an individual, as I started to get more excited about crypto markets and crypto infrastructure, was just shocked at how inefficient and undeveloped the market was. For example, most people today, if you want to participate in the stock market, not only can you buy most stocks very easily at very fine price increments, like most stocks are liquid, with virtually no fees. And most people, actually, the way most of us invest is we buy the S&P 500 index or the all market index. It's very easy to buy these like products to be involved in the stock market. We buy them in our 401k or whatever, right? No problem. None of that really exists in crypto. It's really hard to get an account open. It's very confusing. It feels scary, the moving things around if you need to. The fees are outrageous on most platforms. We offer zero fees. But then also there's like no index funds. Like you can't even buy a like all market index of crypto. Like none of these things exist. It's just, and the other thing was very frustrating for me was if you try to do basic things like what's my cost basis for the trades I've had, or what's my performance been, what's the tax implications, what's the historical performance of these things, it's really, really hard to get that data. And so, I recognized as someone who kind of invests in other products, I was like, these are real, I believe this is going to be an asset class, and I would like to invest in a more sophisticated way. And I think that there's an opportunity to start building these things for investors.
Yeah, that's great. I'm a huge advocate for crypto, and invested in it today and will be moving forward as well. In the up market and the down market, I just think there's a tremendous opportunity with the blockchain and everything else that's happening there. For those that don't know about Rocketplace, what's your mission and what is it that you feel it's like the basis for your company today?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is really to open up access to crypto to all investors. And that's actually both retail and institutional. It's not just about retail customers. We want to be able to build the products for the institutions so that they can build products for retail investors or other institutional investors. There's a whole bunch of regulatory compliance, disclosure, performance that really makes it almost impossible for institutions to even build those products today for investors. And so we want to be part of the solution of making this a sophisticated and safe asset class.
I love it. Founders need to have an optimistic attitude and view in good times and in turbulent times. And we've seen a lot over the last 15 years. What's your secret in staying positive with your current company, your employees, just in life? What's your secret sauce?
Oh, that's a tough question. Ben Horowitz has this great quote that entrepreneurs, when you start a company, you're going to sleep like a baby. And that's every night you go to bed crying and screaming. And that is certainly what it was like for a long time as a young entrepreneur. Just perpetual existential fear. Probably my secret is perseverance. My father used to give me a poem when I was a very young kid. He used to coach my baseball team. And he would give it to me and all the other teammates at the end of every season when we inevitably lost at some point in the playoffs. I don't remember. Maybe once we won the championship. And basically the famous last line of the poem is, "Don't worry about failure. Worry about the chances you miss when you don't even try." And, it talks about how, hey, Babe Ruth was a good hitter, but he struck out a lot. Being an entrepreneur, you strike out a lot. For example, however many VCs have said yes to me, easily, the number must be somewhere between 10x that number. I mean, it may be more of VCs that have said no. The number of amazing people I've tried to hire, again, an enormous number of people have said no. Every day, you're building an acquisition funnel, and hundreds of people, thousands of people are essentially saying no. They're dropping out of your funnel, right? Maybe you're doing an enterprise sale. People are saying, companies are saying no. You're getting bombarded with no's. But, how many VCs do you really need to say yes? How many employees do you really need to say yes? It's the yeses that you have to be motivated to be I can get to yes. There is, I hear, and you try to learn from the no's, right? Why did that customer say no? You watch the video and be why is this person dropping off? How do we fix it? You take notes about your investment pitch. Why did this VC say no? How do we fix it? What can I learn from it? Why did this potential hire say no? What can we learn? How do we fix it? How do we improve? Perseverance and constant improvement and getting belief that you can get to yes and that you can improve. That's, I guess, the secret. And I'm sure I'm just, a sucker for punishment.
Yeah. That's an incredible answer. I love it. You mentioned your dad giving you a poem and also coaching you. What was the impact that your dad had in your life?
I mean, both my parents are amazing. My mom's actually the entrepreneur. You know, I think that, you know, my father being my coach, I think certainly one of the things that my father taught me, ironically, this came more in sports than in anything, was really that lesson of hard work. So like, for example, I played tennis and baseball, but I think that the thing I had to learn is like, you might be naturally athletic or not. I'm not saying I was, I probably wasn't. But even what you really learn, even with the people that have natural gifts, I mean, Michael Jordan tells these stories, is Michael Jordan takes a 1,000 free throws. I don't know if you've ever seen the videos of Michael Jordan, but the number of hours that Michael Jordan, even as a superstar, spends shooting, practicing from different spots to really dial it in. It's really the work. You know, when I was playing tennis, it was every single morning waking up before school and practicing my serve and going to practice after school. Playing baseball, the hours and hours and hours in front of the batting machine, practicing and practicing and practicing. It's the work that you put in that ultimately is the thing that really makes the difference. And I think actually my father really taught me that through sports, was that just like, it doesn't just come naturally. You've got to fail a million times and do it wrong and make those slight changes to figure it out. And that is what company building is. That's what building product is all day, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's, you know, I think parents have an incredible impact on you, whether you're in school or career or in life, and to take those lessons and apply them sometimes makes the difference in who succeeds and who doesn't. So sounds like you had a great set of parents. Your career journey in startups is amazing, Louis. What could you share with others aspiring to build a startup, to get into the market of being an entrepreneur and really taking the chance to seeing if they do in fact have enough?
Yeah. I'd say that the biggest thing, maybe there's two things. So the first thing I would say is you should only pursue something you are truly passionate about. Because like, you need to ask yourself, if you were to work on this thing for the next 20 years, 30 years, the rest of your life, you're going to be totally known for it. It's all you're going to work on every day. It's all you're going to talk about. It's all you're going to think about. Are you happy about that, despite any financial success? Just like you love this problem. And by the way, if that's true, if you're like, you get to work on this thing that you love for the next 30, 40, 50 years, that's success. Doesn't matter how much money you make. You got to work on the thing that you truly love, right? And that's like, I think, the most important thing, right? And a lot of people, by the way, non-entrepreneurs, this is true for any career advice. Doesn't matter what you are, doctor, a nurse, a teacher, right? Like, do you love it? Great. You get to do it for 50 years? Great. Aren't you happy? Perfect, right? Just do what you really like, and then it will work itself out. The thing that I see sometimes with entrepreneurs is they just want to found something. They're like, oh, I have this great, people need dry cleaners. I'm like, are you really excited about dry cleaning, right? Mobile dry cleaning, right? Because like, if you're not super passionate about dry cleaning and you're going to do it are you going to do this for 50 years? Are you really going to be able to innovate in this space? Like, is this what you want to base your life on? And I think those more often lead to failure. The second thing I would say is, that's really important, is companies are not built by one person. And the very first thing you have to do, besides deciding that you want to go pursue this idea, is go find some people to do it with. Those are your very first investors. They're not the actual money. The people that are going to join your team, they're investing with their lives. And you're hopefully going to work with those people for many, many, many years. You're going to spend all day with them. You're going to see them probably more than you see your family. And no great company has ever been built by one person. And so who are those people that you're going to start this company with? You got to go recruit them. And that's, part of being a founder is bringing resources in. And whether that's future employees, that's sales, that's customers, that's money. And so it's like that you just got to, and if you're having trouble you have to start with those other people, those first group of people. That's the first step. And so, really thinking hard about who those people are, how you recruit them, what's the story you tell, how you share equity with them and make it a good environment. What's the culture you're going to build? Those are the two most critical things of your time.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. I totally agree. Louis, I don't know what to say. This has been an incredible experience to hear your story. And in our view, we always believe that it's the story that matters with whatever you're doing in life, whether it's your personal story, your company's story, you're pitching your story. If it resonates because there's passion and there's a real mission behind it, you're going to attract the right people. You're also going to feel good about what you're doing in life. And you, my man, seem like you figured this out. I want to thank you for joining us today with me and my co-host Leo. We'll be back with another episode of From the Ground Up. Louis, enjoy. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you. It's awesome. Really enjoyed it.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. This show is sponsored by Match Relevant, a company that helps venture-backed startups find the best people in the market, and they do it in 3 simple steps. First, they sit down with founders to understand their story. Second, they tell their story into multiple candidate channels. And third, they schedule interviews within 48 hours. Find us at matchrelevant.com to learn more about how we do it.